Hello, and welcome to this brief introduction on how to do source tracing within the MSX module within InfoWater Pro. Within this water drop, we are going to be discussing the MSX module and specifically looking at how it can be used to determine source tracing within a particular network. So within this simple MSX module, it's going to be great for modelers looking to see how flows mix within their network, pump operations to see where different sources come and how different groundwater sources might mix with surface water sources within a network, trace studies, emergency preparedness evaluations in case of a contamination, and it's a great first step again into the MSX module within InfoWater Pro, now included within every InfoWater Pro subscription for folks wanting to get into more advanced water quality analysis. The workflow we're going to be going through today is 5 steps. The first step we're actually mostly going to be skipping over, but the first step to do an MSX module is to have a functional extended period simulation model within InfoWater Pro. The next piece you're going to do is set the MSX option. So we're going to go through how to set the very basic terms and species within that MSX module to do this kind of source trace evaluation. Next, we're going to set our set points within the model itself. I'm going to run the analysis and then review the results to look at how different sources might mix within our model. So within this particular model, the MSX run has already been run and evaluated. We're going to walk through the steps for how I got to this particular point. So coming over to the run manager here, and next we'll go to the simulations portion. And the third tab here is the water quality tab within the simulations options for InfoWater Pro. So within this tab, you have multiple ways to look at water quality in here. The more common ways of looking at source tracing might be the source trace option or the multi-trace option. However, by doing the source trace within the MSX module, one, it's a great way to start to learn how the MSX module works and functions and how you can apply it to your network for other instances. And two, the drawback for the multi-trace is that it's actually multiple source traces, one after the other, so there's oftentimes you can get results that go over 100% in terms of looking at percentages within your model, because if you have flow that goes from one tank to another tank to another tank, it's going to count to that multiple times there. So by doing the MSX module that we're going to display in this video, you won't have any percentages that go over 100%. Alright, so if I click the ellipses there, again, there are a lot of preloaded MSX modules for tracing, chloramines, disinfection byproducts, etc. You can customize these as you need to, but I've created this kind of 5-source module here within the MSX tool. So here are my settings within the general tab here. I'm not going to spend too much time on that. The main thing I want to highlight within this particular video if I'm just doing a source trace is here you can specify the different sources maybe that you want to trace. So in this particular model, I've got a lot of different wells that I've assigned each of those a different species to. Right, so I've got these species, they're unitless. A lot of these factors are pretty standard here, and because we're tracing kind of a non-reactive source, really, constituent here, all of my P and T terms are the same, really. And all of those terms relate to this same term here in my terms tab, where the expression is nothing. No reaction, don't have to do anything here. You can see compared to other modules here, those terms and expressions can be much more complicated, but in this particular case, if I'm just doing a kind of source trace, that term can be very simple there. Alright, so once those terms are specified within the MSX module there, the next piece we'll be looking at is how to specify the sources themselves in those initial conditions at my different reservoirs, wells, tanks, etc. here. So what you can do is specify your water quality at all nodes or a particular selection. What I've done in this example is looked at my particular domain, and in my domain I've added all of my reservoirs and tanks very easily here, and you can see I've got my different tanks and reservoirs selected here. You can see those in the domain. In the background here I've got that highlighted red, it's in the domain. Now I've specified the particular species. That was that 1 through 5 there. The initial water quality, that's 100%. 100% of the water there is for species 1, and that source type is a concentration. So that concentration is 100% because that initial quality is 1. If you want it to be less than that, this would be a decimal, right? So I've done that. Very simple here. Save that. And now you are ready to run your MSX run here. Alright, so once I run that analysis, you can see I can move my slide bar here to change the actual results here. Here you're going to see the actual source trace at particular junctions. So if I select a junction here and I move this slide bar, you're going to see those values potentially change slightly depending on the time within my particular model run. And if I select maybe a more interesting junction, maybe this one here, and I bring up the graph, I already have this template set up so I can see the concentrations within this particular junction in terms of source tracing, right? So here I can see my 5 different sources, all color-coded here on this graph, all displayed in one axis here. And I can toggle in between and look at different particular runs here. So I can see, at this particular hour, we've got 32%, 12%, and fractions beneath that in terms of water quality there. You're going to want to go out to a later run, a later point within your model, so 4 hours probably won't have everything add up to 100%. So if you go out to a later hour here, I'm going to see that those values more likely add up to 100% flow there, 100% from my different sources. Alright, so in summary, again, it's very easy to get started with the MSX module. Again, there can be a lot of complicated water quality studies you can do with it, but if you're wanting to do a better version of multi-source tracing within MSX, it's very easy to keep it simple. Simply name your species and keep your terms very simple and non-reactive. And then you can start using MSX for simple source tracing. The next thing you're going to want to do is, like we just did in the example, you're going to want to adjust the initial conditions. So in my example, I was adjusting on the domain, which was primarily focused on my reservoirs and tanks, and specifying those concentrations within my run there. And then last thing, specify your run your model. Oftentimes you want a longer time period for your run. Report on that with some custom features that you can look at within the graphing tools within InfoWater Pro. You also have the Model Explorer window, which will show your outputs as well. But with that, hopefully that enables you to get started with using the MSX module now included with every subscription of InfoWater Pro.